Now let's turn to the Middle East, where Israel has blocked aid to Gaza for 2 months, saying it won't allow supplies until it can prevent terrorists from stealing them. However, UN officials and aid groups warn that Israel's plan to use the military to distribute aid would impact humanitarian efforts, limit aid access and force Palestinians to relocate, violating international law. At least 43 people died in Israeli airstrikes, according to the latest reports. The United States, Israel and a new international foundation are nearing a deal to resume humanitarian aid to Gaza without involvement from Hamas, Axios reported, citing Israeli and US officials. Meanwhile, aid ship organised by the Freedom Flotilla coalition was struck by drones in international waters off Malta. The group says the mission aimed to break Israel's blockade of Gaza. The International Court of Justice concluded hearings on Israel's responsibilities to allow the UN and other aid agencies to operate in occupied Palestinian territories. The Arab League told the court that Israel is legally obligated not to interfere with the UNRWA's operations. Representative Mohammed Helal stressed that the UN is fueling its duty to protect Palestinian welfare until a resolution is reached. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has called the situation in Gaza catastrophic and urged for a ceasefire and the release of captives. Amnesty International is demanding Israel end what it describes as a war crime, using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare. Eric Guevara Rosas, Amnesty's senior director, says Gaza is an inferno of death and destruction due to the ongoing siege and fighting. We stay in the Middle East once again, where the Israel Defense Forces confirmed that it had launched another wave of airstrikes attacking military targets. Syrian state media reported explosions north of Damascus and in the countryside close to the city of Hama. Israel had earlier used its fighter jets bombing an area next to the presidential palace in Syria's capital of Damascus. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that these strikes were a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow the deployment of forces south of Damascus or any over threat to the Druze community. The Syrian presidency has said it strongly condemns the strikes, calling them a dangerous escalation intended to destabilize Syria. Israel also carried out strikes south of Damascus on Wednesday during clashes between Druze gunmen, security forces and allied Sunni Islamist fighters. Qatar and Saudi Arabia strongly condemned the Israeli airstrike that targeted the presidential palace in Damascus, calling it a blatant act of aggression against the sovereignty of Syrian territory. In a statement, the Qatari Foreign Ministry denounced the strike in the strongest terms, reiterating its full support for the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of Syria. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also criticised the latest Israeli bombing, calling it a violation of Syria's sovereignty. Let's listen in to what the UN spokesperson had to say.
Context, he also condemns Israel's violation of Syria's sovereignty, including the latest airstrikes near the presidential palace in Damascus. It is essential that these attacks stop and that Israel respects Syria's sovereignty, its unity, its territorial integrity.
The United States has carried out another round of airstrikes on Yemen, targeting the Ras Issa oil port in Hodeidah, a site already hit last month in a strike that killed at least 80 people. According to Houthi-run media, 7 fresh US strikes hit the Al Salif district overnight. This renewed bombing comes as the Houthis launched 2 missiles towards Israel, aiming at the Ramat David airbase and the Tel Aviv area. The Israeli military says both were intercepted, though the outcome of the second is still being verified. The Houthis claim the use of hypersonic missiles, calling the strike a military operation in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The group says their attacks will continue unless Israel agrees to a permanent truce. Meanwhile, rights groups are raising alarms over the civilian death toll in Yemen.